Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The call hit mid-sip and the cup slipped. I'm Mara, 29. I gripped the counter and listened. Lear is gone. Dan's breath stuttered once, then stopped. The line stayed alive while something inside me didn't. I pulled on shoes and missed the heel twice. My fingers failed the lock, then found it anyway. Cold air slapped me awake and fear answered back. I needed Evan now, no later, no polite waiting. I called him while running to the car. Declined, text bubble blinked, then vanished. Another call declined again, a short reply arrived. Busy right now. My chest burned hotter than panic. I drove hard and clipped a curb, the wheel jerked. A horn chased me through the intersection and faded. I typed one line at the red light. Emergency. The light changed and so did I. His building came fast and wrong, too bright, too quiet. Evan's car sat close to the entry like a sentinel. I touched the hood and felt the lingering heat. My stomach dropped because heat means time and secrets. The lobby keypad blinked and my code still worked. Upstairs, the hallway felt narrow like a funnel. I raised my hand to knock and froze midair. A laugh floated out, soft, private, not mine. I hit the bell twice and stepped back. Footsteps shuffled and a drawer slid shut hard. Just a sec, cheerful voice, familiar voice. A tiny hairline in trust widened with a snap. The door opened and Evan filled the frame. Bare shoulders, damp hair, breath held like a lie. His eyes scanned my face and then the floor. My heart read the room faster than words. Lear is dead, I said it like a fact. He blinked and reached out and I didn't move. A whisper behind him, hushed, playful, practiced. He shifted sideways and that was an answer. I pushed past and felt his hand catch wrist. Wait, the grip tightened and then loosened. I kept walking and the hallway stretched long. The bedroom door clicked, gentle, but knives can whisper. I turned the knob and stepped into rumpled truth. Empty bed, running fan, light bleeding from the bath. I crossed the room and steadied my breathing. The door swung wide and she faced me. Bare feet on tile, hair wet like after practice. Her smile didn't reach anywhere real on her face. My maid of honor leaned against the frame, unbothered. My pulse found a new rhythm, broken, steady, undeniable. How long? 2 words, flat, heavy, loaded. Evan hovered behind me like a scared reflection. She glanced at him once and then at me. Silence packed the doorway like a barricade. I slid the ring off because my hand hurt. Metal kissed the dresser and held there like proof. Evan flinched at the sound and looked away. I met her eyes and refused to blink. My phone vibrated in my pocket like a trapped bee. Dan again. I let it ring and kept breathing. I could call back in 5 minutes or never. Either choice would redraw my life with brutal ink. Talk tonight, Evan whispered, voice frayed but selfish. Tonight already happened, I answered and took a step. He reached and stopped short like a thief caught. The fan kept buzzing and would not shut up. I sent Dan one text with slow fingers. With Evan I'll call soon. The lie tasted rotten. I turned off the fan and the room hardened. I wanted quiet because quiet holds truth still. She folded her arms like a referee before kickoff. Evan cleared his throat and stared at the carpet. My legs steadied under me and decided something. I would not walk backward through this door again. I flicked off the bathroom light and pointed at the counter. Phones both. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. She smirked and placed hers down first. Evan hesitated, then set his beside it, screen pulsing. Unlock. I crossed my arms and waited. He tapped the code with a shaky thumb. She stared at me, jaw tight, then followed. 2 screens bloomed, bright and cornered like trapped animals. I opened his messages and saw the thread on top. A heart name, a timestamp from 10 minutes prior. A photo thumbnail loaded slow, then sharpened. Her hand on his chest, today's bracelet flashing. Delete it, he blurted, reaching across the gap. I slid the phones farther away with one finger. She clicked her tongue once, impatient and fearless. Let her look, she tossed, eyes daring a fire. I pressed play on a voice memo and heard laughter. His voice came first, low and eager. Hers followed, lighter, practiced, intimate. I stopped it before the next word because enough. Condoms or chaos? I asked without blinking. He swallowed and stared at the sink like it could help. Chaos, she answered, rolling a wrist like a shrug. My pulse spiked and a warning bell went off. Show me your calendar, I said, moving fast. He flinched and tried a weak grin that died. I swiped through weeks and counted overlapping blocks. My stomach folded when I saw yesterday's overlap. Did you know about Leah today? I asked quietly. He nodded once and rubbed his eyebrow raw. You row? T busy while she left the world. His mouth trembled like a child, but I felt nothing. Her screen buzzed and a notification flashed across it. Tell her to leave from a number I recognized. The name read Bridesman Max and my throat clenched. I lifted an eyebrow and waited for the next chime. Turn off notifications, she muttered and grabbed the phone. I caught her wrist and held just enough pressure. You looped him in, I said, voice flat as steel. She pulled free and smiled like rules never applied. Keys, I said to Evan, flicking my hand out. He blinked at the dresser like they might appear. Spare car storage now, I kept my tone clipped. He dumped the ring of metal into my palm, shaking. Locker 2, I added, remembering our shared unit. His shoulders sagged and he nodded, eyes on the floor. She stepped to the doorway and folded her arms. No more orders, she muttered, and my glare froze her. I opened her messages and scrolled without apology. Photos, hotel receipts, a screenshot from his work chat. My name and a joke neither found risky. I breathed once, then twice to keep from exploding. Call him, I said, pointing at the bridesman. She laughed, but her hand lifted anyway. Speakerphone crackled and Max answered with a hiss. Is she gone? He whispered, then went silent. She's not, I said, leaning closer to the mic. His breath caught and the line clicked dead. Cowardice leaves a smell when it burns out. I stared at her and watched composure fracture. My phone vibrated again and I finally answered. Dan's voice arrived raw and already breaking. We need you here, he gulped air between words. I promised to come soon and hung up shaking. I faced Evan and pointed at the bed. Sit, he obeyed like his strings got yanked. Pick one truth and give it without spin. He looked at her and I lifted the second phone. We didn't end it, he whispered and stared at his hands. We planned to talk later, my chest iced over. Later is a graveyard, I snapped and he flinched hard. The room tightened until even breathing scraped. Call your father, I said, grabbing his device again. He grabbed my wrist with a flash of temper. I jerked back and the mask crossed his face. There he was, the man who won by pressure. Wrong move, I said and raised the camera. I snapped a photo of both phones, screens visible. Timestamps blazing, names clear, evidence assembled. His jaw worked while panic kept score. She stepped closer, arms loose and ready. Blackmail doesn't suit you, her smile begged a fight. Documentation suits me fine, I answered without blinking. She held my stare and then blinked first. Pack a bag, I told him, voice back to even. 3 minutes, just essentials, not a single gift. He moved like someone drained him of voltage. I watched his hands and counted every second aloud. She leaned on the doorframe and tried another angle. You'll forgive him after the service, her tone dared me. I let the words hang and imagined my life smaller. Then I pictured Leah laughing and the idea cracked. You will message vendors tonight, I said to him. Drafts I approve, then you send. He nodded and grabbed a charger like muscle memory. I nodded at the trash and he dropped it in. I lifted my phone and opened our wedding chat. A feat of planning and smiling in future. I typed one line and left it unsent for now. Event postponed, details to follow, my thumb hovered. He reappeared with a backpack and eyes gone hollow. Wallet license, he showed them without a word. Good, now transfer your share for the venue. He blinked and swayed and finally opened the banking app. She watched the progress bar crawl and drummed her fingers. I held my breath until the confirmation popped. Money moved means choices lock in place. I exhaled and the room felt colder on purpose. Where will you go? He asked, voice thin as paper. Away from you, I didn't soften a syllable. Grief needs quiet, you killed that here. He nodded once and swallowed something bitter. She stepped in close and lowered her voice. You're not strong enough to do this publicly. I laughed short because doubt sounds like gasoline. Watch me, her expression cracked then hardened again. I took one more photo, both faces in frame. Not shame, not love, just calculation and sweat. Then I pocketed the phones and handed his back. Your turn to call someone, I said and waited. He looked at the screen like it might save him. He tapped his mother's name and put it on speaker. Mom, he started, then glanced at me and froze. I crossed my arms and let the silence grow teeth. He hung up before she answered and tossed the phone. Coward move, pattern move, old move. I picked it up and pressed call again. His hand shot out then dropped, choice made. Before the first ring, I ended it and stepped away. Not yet, you'll do it when I say. His shoulders squared like he remembered pride. I wait. D ready, and he looked down first. Elevator or stairs, she asked with a tight smile. Stairs, I said and grabbed the door. I turned back once and pointed at the bathroom. Clean that mirror, it knows too much already. I took the stairs two at a time and didn't look back. Footsteps followed, quick and uneven, like guilt learning to run. On the landing, she caught up and brushed my shoulder. Don't make a scene, her whisper scratched, begging for a spotlight. I stopped on the next step and faced her head on. You already staged one, my breath steadied because fury focuses. Evan lagged behind, backpack bumping against the rail with dull thuds. A door opened below and a neighbor froze, halfway curious. We moved again and reached the exit, nerves buzzing. Outside, air hit hard and choice hit harder. Split here, I told her, pointing toward the street. She hovered, then turned away with her chin high. At the car, I unlocked fast and threw the bag inside. Evan circled to the passenger seat and hesitated. Back seat, I pointed without blinking and waited. He climbed in and buckled slowly, eyes avoiding mine. I started the engine and dialed Dan on speaker. On my way, I said, words clipped to the bone. He exhaled like he'd been holding a wall. Good, and there with the director, we need decisions. 15 minutes, I promised, then ended the call. From the mirror, I caught Evan's face, drained and small. We're stopping once before the chapel, I watched his jaw tense. Where? His voice rasped, thin and cornered by fear. Clinic, I answered, turning left across a gap in traffic. I want tests ordered and paperwork signed today. He leaned forward, hands splayed against the seat. Are you serious? He knew I was. You chose chaos, I said, keeping the car straight. Consequences go with it, we handle them now. He muttered something and stared at the floor mat. I let the silence sharpen the lesson until it cut. We reached the clinic and I parked tight against the curb. Inside, I said, already opening my door. He followed with shoulders hunched like a reluctant recruit. At check-in, I slid the ID forward and met eyes. Urgent screening, I said, voice firm but calm. Today, if possible, the receptionist scanned, then nodded once. Forms appeared and pens scratched and time pressed. I initialed where needed and watched his shaking hands. In the hallway, he reached for my elbow and missed. Please don't post anything, he blurted, lips cracked. Earn my silence, I replied, and he swallowed hard. A nurse called his name and he vanished behind a door. I paced once and texted Dan 3 clear updates. Here for tests, then chapel, hold decisions. He replied with a single dot, then another. I breathed slow through the waiting because impatience wastes strength. Evan returned with cotton tape to the crook of his arm. Results would follow later, but the promise mattered now. One more stop, I said, and he didn't argue. We walked out in step, but not together. Back in the car, I opened our wedding channel. I typed pause all deliveries, family meeting tonight. I didn't send it yet, not before the next move. I needed one more piece visible before I cut. I pulled to a strip mall and parked near a tailoring shop. Out, I said, grabbing the backpack strap and tugging. He stared at the storefront and paled like memory hit. Inside, I repeated, rhythm steady, resolve already set. The tailor looked up and recognized the garment bag instantly. Pick up, I kept my gaze on Evan's reflection. He reached for it and his fingers trembled. Leave it, I said, and the tailor blinked. Please return it to stock, I added, voice even. No alterations, no holds, no exceptions. The tailor studied my face and nodded once. Understood, metal hangers squeaked and a future slipped away. Outside, Evan sagged against the wall and rubbed his temple. I can fix this, he murmured almost to himself. You already fixed it the other way, I answered. He looked at me and finally understood the distance. My phone rang and Leah's sister flashed across the screen. I answered with a steady breath and braced for impact. She wanted your song played, she said, voice crumbling. Can you bring the sheet? My grip tightened around the wheel. I have a copy, I said truthfully and carefully. I'll bring it and stand with you when it plays. Her relief broke through, soft and raw and needed. Thank you, the line clicked and left a ringing ache. I turned to Evan and held out my hand. Unlock your piano folder and forward the sheet now. He fumbled with the phone and complied without comment. A file pinged through and landed like a promise kept. We drove in silence until the church came into view. Mourners gathered in small knots and shadows tightened. I parked and faced him with both hands on the wheel. You will sit 3 rows back and keep your head down. He nodded and reached for the door handle. One more thing, I said, stopping him with a look. After the service, you call your mother and tell everything. He shut his eyes and nodded again, slower this time. I stepped out and the world narrowed to steps and doors. Dan waited by the entrance with sleepless eyes and open arms. I walked into that hug and let myself shake. Ready, he asked, and I nodded though nothing felt ready. He glanced over my shoulder and saw the figure in the car. Do I need to move him? Dan asked under his breath. Not now, I said, voice flat as slate. Later I'll be done asking. Inside, the director crossed the aisle with a clipboard. He needed answers on music and order and readings. I pointed to the song and my name under it. I'll play and speak, he exhaled, and the plan locked. On the front bench, Leah's mother stared forward, unblinking. I took the empty place beside her and clasped her hand. She squeezed once and returned to the horizon. My eyes stung, but I kept them clear for what was next. As people settled, my phone vibrated against my palm. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. Keep my name out of it or I talk. No signature, no courage, only pressure looking for a crack. I turned the phone face down and traced the keys in my mind. Right hand first entry, left hand simple support. I could play it even if the lights failed. I would play it even if my voice broke. Dan leaned in and whispered one quick question. After this, we go to your parents or mine? Yours, I answered without doubt and without apology. Mine comes second, I need kindness first. The director nodded from the aisle and stepped aside. I rose and walked to the instrument with steady feet. Behind me, I felt Evan shift in his seat. I didn't turn because turning would hand him power. I placed my fingers on the keys and let the room breathe. The first chord landed and the air changed. I thought of Leah singing along off-key on purpose. I played for that memory and nothing else survived. Halfway through, a sob cracked the stillness and wavered. I didn't rush because rushing ruins truth. The final note hung and then settled on the floor. I lifted my hands and knew the next fight waited. I stood to speak and my hands didn't shake. I loved her stubborn promise to stay, I began. A throat cleared in the third row and I paused. Behind me, a shoe scraped the floor like a dare. I chose 5 sentences and no memories that begged pity. I looked at the sister, then the mother, then the urn. We keep breathing for her, I finished and stepped down. A phone vibrated nearby and my jaw locked. The director gestured and the aisle moved like a tide. I drifted to the side and waited for the break. Evan rose from his seat and took one careful step. Dan blocked him with a shoulder and a look. The sister pulled me into a quick embrace and exhaled. She wanted that exact verse, she whispered into my hair. I nodded once and held her longer than planned. Over her shoulder, the bridesman hovered near the door. We formed a line for condolences and steady hands. Evan edged closer like gravity pulled him toward me. I kept my eyes on the widow and her breath. He stopped 2 paces away and lingered there uncertain. Max approached with a forced smile and polished shoes. Rough day, he muttered, adjusting a cuff with nervous fingers. Keep my name out of posts, he added without looking up. I tilted my head and let the pause stretch. You gave orders in texts, I answered with a low tone. Screenshots, don't forget names, he blinked twice and swallowed. I panicked, he whispered, finally meeting my eyes. Then stop texting, I said, and he backed off. The processional ended and the room thinned to family. I reached Evan with Dan still planted between us. You promised to call after, I reminded, chin lifted. He nodded and glanced toward the parking lot like escape. Do it here, I added, pointing at the side hallway. He fished his phone out and stared at the screen. On speaker, I said, folding my arms and waiting. He tapped the contact and the ring pulsed loud. Sweetheart, came the answer, warm and unsuspecting. He drew in air and his throat clicked. Mom, the wedding is canceled, he forced out slowly. Because I broke her trust, he continued, eyes on me. The silence on that line turned into a weight. What do you mean, she asked, voice dropping an octave. With someone close to us, he said and swallowed hard. My pulse pounded but my face stayed unreadable. You will apologize to her parents tonight, I added. He closed his eyes and nodded for the second time. Where do I send flowers? His mother asked, still processing. To her family, I answered and ended the call. The bridesman reappeared with a hushed warning in his ear. Cora wants to talk, he muttered, not meeting my gaze. I turned and there she was by the side door. Her arms were crossed and her smile had teeth. We need a plan, she began, stepping close for privacy. You need distance, I corrected, keeping my tone even. Leave this service without theatrics and never text me again. Her nostrils flared, then she laughed under her breath. You won't outlast the comments, she said, leaning in. I don't read comments, I replied, lifting my chin. Screenshots work both ways, she countered, eyes unblinking. I own mine, I said, and watched hers waver. Dan touched my elbow and nodded toward the foyer. The parents are ready, he murmured, steady and present. We crossed the threshold and the air felt heavier. Their eyes found mine and braced for whatever came. We're postponing everything tied to me, I stated clearly. I will handle refunds and notices tonight. Her father's gaze softened a fraction at the word handle. He squeezed my shoulder once and let go. The director returned with the ledger and a hesitant question. Reception slides, he asked, uncertain where to step. Cut them, I answered, because the room needed calm. He wrote a note and hurried back to his team. Evan lingered near the wall like he wanted absolution. I gestured him forward with 2 fingers and no smile. You sit with your family and speak only when asked. He swallowed and nodded, finally understanding the new order. A deacon approached with the program for the final hymn. Will you stay for the prayer? He asked with respectful distance. Yes, I said, because rituals can hold people together. No eulogy from him, I added, and the deacon understood. During the hymn, my phone buzzed twice in quick bursts. Unknown number again with a shorter threat this time. Tell anyone and I leak your college stuff. I stared at the line and let a grin surface. I typed 4 words and didn't hit send. Try me, bring proof, then I deleted the draft. Fear wanted attention and I denied the stage. The buzzing stopped and the quiet returned like armor. We filed back to the aisle for the final processional. I kept pace with the family and didn't look behind me. Near the door, Cora waited with a tilted chin. She brushed my arm as I passed and whispered, later. Outside, a cousin hugged me and pressed an envelope. For flowers, she whispered, tears sliding down her face. I nodded and tucked it away for the sister. Kindness hit hard and almost knocked me off balance. Evan's father approached with lines deep around his mouth. Are you driving to the house? He asked carefully. Dan is, I answered, glancing toward the curb. We'll follow, he said, and stepped back without debate. At the car, I opened the door and paused mid-motion. Across the street, Cora and Max argued beside a rideshare. She waved her hands and he stared down at his shoes. Something shifted there and I marked it for later. I slid into the passenger seat and exhaled slow. Dan started the engine and waited for my cue. Home first, I said, staring straight ahead. Then vendors, then statements, in that order. He merged into traffic and passed the church sign. We call the venue together, he offered without flourish. Good, I said, because witnesses matter when stories twist. In the mirror, Evan watched our car pull away. I unlocked my phone and drafted the first notice. Event on hold due to family emergency, updates forthcoming. I saved it and opened the vendor spreadsheet with steady fingers. I would send when I reached a chair and a door. Dan reached over and squeezed my knee once for grounding. You did well, he said, eyes still on the road. I stared at the horizon and thought of the test results. A new message popped up and I braced for impact. Clinic automated text, results available in portal now. I met Dan's eyes and nodded toward the next turn. Wi-Fi and a printer, I said, voice level and cool. He accelerated and the day tilted toward a reckoning. I logged into the portal and clicked the new alert. Dan stood behind me with a glass of water. The page loaded slow, then flashed a single red word. Reactive, my scalp tingled and my knuckles whined. I expanded the line and skimmed the notes twice. Follow-up required within 2 days, partner notification recommended. I breathed out through my teeth and lifted my phone. Anonymous notices go out now, I said in minute. Dan watched my fingers draft the clinic messages. One for Evan, one for the other number. I hit send and the confirmations arrived like hammer taps. A third went to my own doctor for scheduling. Next, I said and opened the vendor list. We called the venue first and kept it formal. Cancel under force majeure, I read, tone controlled and clear. The manager paused, then approved the clause with a sigh. Catering answered on the second ring and asked for reason. Family emergency, I said and let the silence bite. They accepted the hold and promised a partial return. I wrote the amount and circled it hard. The photographer tried to charm his way around policy. Dan leaned toward the mic and named his full rate. Match the contract or we escalate today, he added. Click approved, I logged the figure and moved on. My phone lit up with Evan's name and a text. Clinic message received. I will repeat testing tomorrow. I stared at the words until steadiness returned. Do it today, I replied, and the dot blinked. Another alert arrived from an unsaved number with pressure. Stop smearing, legal next. It smelled like Max's wording. I forwarded the screenshot to Dan with one line. Different tactics, same fear. He nodded and sat closer. I opened the wedding chat and typed an update. Gathering pause due to a death in our circle. Vendors notified, guests hold travel until further notice. I hit send and watched reactions ripple like sparks. Within a minute, my mother called and went straight in. We can host the families tonight, she offered, steady. Tomorrow, I said, because I needed quiet to think. We will meet tomorrow and keep it contained. The clinic portal pinged again with a supplementary note. Preliminary screen only, confirmatory assay pending. Two paths opened in my head at once. I chose both and planned for the darker one. The doorbell rang and Dan's brother stepped inside carefully. He carried takeout and a printed clipboard for signatures. Fuel and paperwork, he said, placing them on the table. I hugged him once and returned to the laptop. Evan tried calling again and I declined twice. I wrote him a message with 4 clean bullets. Apologize to her parents tonight, send vendor emails now, screenshot receipts, book follow-up. He replied with a photo of his drafted apology. Make it specific, I answered and attached 3 points. Name the harm, take responsibility, do not request forgiveness. He added each line and asked for one final look. I approved it with a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. Cora finally surfaced with a chirpy text that curdled. Let us be adults and keep this offline. I typed slowly so I wouldn't punch the keys. Adults tell the truth, your move is to vanish. She fired back a blurry picture of us at brunch. Delete the toast video or I post this everywhere. I looked at Dan and turned on the speaker. Post it, I said, voice even, hard iron. Silence, then 3 dots, then nothing at all. I sent her the anonymous clinic notice again. This time I added one line beneath the standard copy. Get tested today, not tomorrow, today we are done. Dan printed the refund letters and handed me a pen. We signed each one and photographed the stacks. He forwarded copies to an email labeled legal. The paper trail grew teeth and I finally exhaled. My phone trilled with a new caller as I stood. Evan's father, short breath, no padding. We've been informed, we are covering our side. Good, I said and ended the call clean. The portal refreshed and showed a time window for confirmation. They could rush it if I arrived before closing. I grabbed my jacket and looked at Dan's watch. Drive me back, I said, and he grabbed keys. We jogged to the car and the sky pressed low. I checked my messages and found one from Leah's sister. Thank you for playing, she would have loved that. My throat clenched and my pace picked up. At the clinic desk, I signed the new consent. The nurse guided me through swabs and vials. She kept her words soft and her hands efficient. I thanked her and walked out with my spine straight. In the parking lot, a figure waited near the hedge. Max, collar high, eyes restless, fingers twitching. He stepped into my path and raised both palms. I can fix this if you stop now. I stopped an arm's length away and measured the ground. You can only fix yourself, I answered, keeping my tone level. Apologize to the family you threatened today. He flinched and looked at his shoes like they might talk. He pulled out his phone and showed a thread. Cora directing him to nudge vendors and stir doubt. Delete, I said, and he hesitated for half a second. Delete and send me a photo of a clean screen. He wiped the chain and handed me the proof. Then he whispered one more detail so fast. She wanted you out before the ceremony reveal. What reveal, I asked, and heat shot through me. A surprise speech about loyalty, he muttered, eyes darting. She wrote lines about you failing Leah last year. I felt the ground tilt and then settle again. She built an alibi before today, I realized, pulse pounding. Dan stepped in from the side and squared his shoulders. We're done with ambushes, he said, voice dry and hard. Max nodded and stepped back toward the curb. I'll text her to stand down, he promised, shrinking. I climbed into the car and shut the door. A message from Evan landed with 3 images attached. Email drafts to the caterer, the florist, the band. Each one owned the truth and carried my edits. Send them, I wrote, and watched his red receipt appear. Blue check, blue check, blue check. On the last one, he typed a single line. I understand the engagement is over. I stared at that sentence until it felt normal. Then I wrote my own and kept it final. Yes, return the keys to Dan tomorrow morning. The dot appeared and then disappeared and then nothing. We reached Dan's apartment and headed upstairs fast. I opened our wedding channel and posted the update. Event cancelled, we appreciate privacy as we grieve. Reactions burst and then steadied into a line of hearts. The portal pinged again with a scheduling note. Doctor available at 8, please confirm. I booked it and set an alarm for dawn. Tomorrow would bring the last piece or another storm. My phone buzzed once more with a blocked contact. Meet me alone or I drop everything tonight. No name, no signature, the timing betrayed her. I typed back 3 syllables and pressed send. Police first, then I powered down the phone. I looked at Dan and felt my ribs expand. I wasn't shaking anymore, I was choosing. The night tightened around us and waited for my call. I dialed non-emergency and reported the threat. Screenshot saved, I told the dispatcher, tone clipped. Advise on restraining steps and evidence transfer. Document everything tonight, she answered, and I did. I powered the phone back on and waited. Cora's blocked number pinged twice, then went quiet. I forwarded her text to the case email. A few minutes later, a ticket number arrived, weighty. Dan brewed coffee and set 2 cups down. We post a clear statement now or tomorrow, he asked. Now, I said, because rumors sprint when you sleep. He opened his laptop and I drafted 3 lines. Event cancelled, health notices issued, harassment reported to authorities. No names, no flourishes, only actions and timestamps. We attached the police ticket and hit publish. For once, the replies came respectful and stunned. Evan texted at dawn with a photo. Keys on his palm and a short apology. I told him to leave them outside the office. Done, he wrote, and the dot stayed silent. At 8 sharp, I met my doctor. She reviewed the preliminary flag and raised an eyebrow. Could be a false alarm, she said, professional and calm. We verified today and move forward either way. Blood drew fast and swabs followed with efficient rhythm. She asked who needed contact if results confirmed. I already notified 2, I answered, jaw set. She nodded once and scheduled end-of-day callbacks final. Outside, the air held that pause before decisions. Dan pulled up and I slid into the seat. Your parents, he asked, checking my face for cracks. After lunch, I said, choosing order over panic. On the way, the bridesman pinged again with urgency. I backed out, she is spiraling, the message read. I called him and cut to the center. Does she plan a public blast? I asked flat. Draft queued on her Finsta, he admitted, voice tiny. Screenshots of you at the clinic, he added. Send me your handle and the draft title. He texted both and begged me not to post him. We reached my parents' place and knocked twice. My mother opened and reached for my shoulders. I'll do details, I told her, eyes steady. Please just sit with me when I call. I dialed his parents on speaker and introduced the agenda. Engagement dissolved, vendors notified, health alert sent. No dispute, his father replied after a measured pause. We accept liabilities on our side, he added, clipped. I ended the call and opened my camera roll. The bathroom shot with both phones, the timestamp wall. The bank transfer confirmation and the vendor replies. I saved them to a secure folder and breathed. A knock rattled the door and my stomach tightened. Evan stood on the step with paper and a bag. Dan stepped between us and I raised a hand. Leave them there and step back 2 paces. He placed the documents and stared past my shoulder. Clinic confirmed negative on rapid follow-up, he murmured. Awaiting lab confirmation next, his eyes searched for mercy. Good, keep going, I replied and closed the door firmly. I opened the envelope and scanned the signatures. Venue settlement, caterer confirmation, photographer concession. He had done the chores under pressure without flair. I filed each page and kept the bag unopened. My mother set a plate in front of me. Eat a little, she urged, chin trembling. I took 3 bites and felt the engine restart. Fuel matters when the day keeps swinging. A buzz jolted the table and I checked notifications. Cora's burner account posted a blurred collage. Captions hinted at betrayal with coy punctuation marks. Comments piled until my statement pinned the thread hard. I messaged the platform with the police ticket. Harassment and medical misinformation, I wrote, precise. Flag acknowledged, review expedited, user under scrutiny. Max pinged, she's losing followers, and I exhaled. Dan drove me to his place for the next calls. I opened a blank doc and titled it Choices. 3 columns: stop, continue, repair. I started listing and felt my hands steady. Stop, wedding, joint savings, shared storage, weekly dinners. Continue therapy piano lessons for Leah's sister. Repair my sleep, my appetite, my trust. I stared at that last word and wrote boundaries twice. My phone rang on schedule and the doctor returned. Confirmatory testing negative, she reported, relief in her cadence. Preliminary was a lab artifact, she added succinctly. I closed my eyes and let my ribs widen. The line stayed quiet and I chose my response. Thank you for moving fast, I said. I'm still notifying partners of exposure risk. Responsible, she answered and promised a written note soon. I texted Evan and Cora the update immediately. Final result negative, preliminary invalidated, proceed with your doctors. Evan replied with one sentence and nothing else. I am grateful for your honesty, he wrote small. Cora's reply landed 1 minute later and barbed. So dramatic for nothing, she typed, bitter and smug. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to records. Then I blocked the account and felt cleaner. The platform removed her collage with a terse notice. Privacy violation and harassment, account suspended. Max sent a single thumbs up and vanished. One front fell quiet while another gathered. Dan's phone rang and he listened without blinking. He handed it to me with a nod. Evan's mother, voice rough, breath measured. We spoke to her parents, we apologized, she said. Thank you, I answered, keeping the tone even. We will cover our half of non-refundable items. We will also keep distance, she added after a beat. Good plan, I said and ended it clean. I forwarded receipts to my insurer with a short summary. Fraud risk minimal, relationship terminated, documentation attached. Automated acknowledgement came back with a case number. Boxes checked do not heal but they protect. Dan tapped the timer on the counter and pointed. 2 minutes to your vendor update blast, he reminded. I opened the template and filled the blanks. Cancellation confirmed, contact this inbox for settlements. I hit send and watched the outbox sweep. Then I turned to him and let my jaw unclench. I want to return her dress, I said. Not with ceremony, with a courier and a receipt. We booked the pickup and printed the label. I wrote 2 lines on a card for inventory. No alterations performed, returning in original condition. I sealed it and felt an old weight lift. My screen flashed with a fresh message from Max. She's packing to leave for a few days. She thinks you'll beg her to stop. Not going to happen, I replied, thumbs steady. He typed again and then changed hi. As mind. Instead, he sent a photo of a typed apology. It named the threats and the interference and the harm. Send this to the family, I wrote direct. He asked for one more assurance and I answered. I won't drag you if you correct loudly. He posted it under his real name within minutes. Comments turned and the tide moved for once. I checked the group chat labeled musicians and open attachments. 2 volunteers offered to play next week at the vigil. I wrote back and thanked them with a clear plan. We picked a time and assigned parts and rests. Late afternoon, Evan requested 5 minutes in person. Public place, witnesses, I responded, no hesitation. He proposed the park near the office. I agreed and told Dan to join, conspicuous. We arrived first and chose a bench by the path. Evan approached with slow steps and empty hands. He sat at angle and kept his eyes down. Thank you for not ruining my job, he started. Your choices did that, I answered, not unkind. I'm not sending HR anything unless you lie. I won't, he said, shoulders sinking like a surrender. I ended it with her, I start counseling tomorrow. Good, I said and reached into my bag. I pulled the final envelope and placed it between us. Mutual release, no defamation, no contact after today. He skimmed and signed and handed it back, trembling. He looked up for the first time and tried a smile. I hope you find peace, he added, almost whispering. I will build it, I answered, standing to leave. Behind us, a jogger passed and the moment broke. We walked back to the car and drove home. Dan turned down the radio and glanced my way. You did not flinch once today, he noted. I did in the bathroom, I admitted, half laughing. Back at his place, I opened a clean notebook. I wrote 3 names on the first page. Leah, her sister, me. Then I wrote what each needed in verbs. For Leah's sister, ride schedules and small dinners. For me, daily walks and no wedding feeds. For Leah, stories told without polishing or excuses. I closed the cover and felt a line click. My phone buzzed one last time with an unknown caller. It was the detective assigned to the ticket. Received your files and platform cooperation, she said. Call if further messages arrive, she added, firm. Will do, I replied and looked at Dan. Tonight we rest, he said, stretching out his back. Tomorrow we visit your parents and set timelines. Tomorrow we also change locks, I added, decisive. We ate quietly and let the quiet do work. I washed the plate and let water run. Grief rose in my throat without warning and hit. Dan held my shoulders until the wave passed slowly. I stepped onto the balcony and counted 10 breaths. Beyond the railing, the street kept moving like always. I thought about the song at the service and paused. Then I hummed the last line and let it go. I opened my phone and drafted one final post. Thank you for kindness, we are safe and supported. No interviews, no speculation, we focus on healing. I posted it and powered the phone down. Inside, I laid out the documents in a row. Ticket copy, clinic note, vendor confirmations, release agreement. They formed a map of a day that couldn't break me. Tomorrow I would file them and start again. I curled on the couch and tucked a blanket tight. Dan switched off the lamp and sat near my feet. Neither of us spoke because nothing needed words. My eyes closed and the house finally exhaled, waiting.